Smoked in the train. That red be keeping me sane. Unstoppable, I am untamed. I am unstoppable just like the train. Yeah, I can't see nobody stopping us. Yeah, we're unstoppable. Went through a whole lot of obstacles. I swear we did the impossible.
What's up, Packer fans? Welcome back to Cheesehead Talk. It's your boy Tramel, coming back with another video. And today in this video, we're going to recap the Green Bay Packers Week 1 of the 2020 free agency. So let's get to it. Now, coming into the 2020 offseason, I believe that the Packers' biggest needs were middle linebacker, wide receiver, interior defensive lineman, and tight end. Now, the Packers would address some of those positions in the first week of free agency, but I just don't think it's enough. And we'll start with the negatives first. And we'll start with their day one signing, offensive tackle, Rick Wagner. He signed with the Green Bay Packers for 2 years, $11 million, and he came from the Detroit Lions. And I say this is a negative because I got to see him a lot in Detroit. I watch a lot of NFC North content during the season. Every single day, I'm watching some type of NFC North content, whether that's the Green Bay Packers, the Detroit Lions, the Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings. I'm watching it all every single day. And out of all the NFC North teams, I'm watching the Detroit Lions content the most on YouTube because they have the funniest YouTubers. They're a losing organization, and I just love seeing the rant videos after the games. Like I said, they're a losing organization, so I get comedy out of watching their post-game videos when they lose from YouTubers all across Detroit. So I got a chance to hear a lot about Rick Wagner during the 2019 season. And almost every single Detroit Lions YouTuber has some negative things to say about him. So I actually took my time out and watched the Detroit Lions game. And I watched him specifically. And he's pretty bad. He was pretty bad in 2019. He was graded as the Detroit Lions' worst offensive lineman in 2019. And he ranked 62nd amongst every single offensive tackle in 2019. 62nd. There are 64 starting offensive tackles in NFL, and he ranked 62nd. So that just shows you how bad he was in 2019. Now, this was his worst season of his career. In the other seasons, he's just average. When he's at his best, he's an average offensive lineman. And in my opinion, we should have just re-signed Brian Bulaga. I know Brian Bulaga is up there in age. He's 32 years old. He's battled some injuries over his career. But last season, he stayed pretty healthy, and he was excellent for the Packers. He was arguably the Green Bay Packers' best offensive lineman in 2019. And like I said, there were only really 4 positions that I thought needed to be upgraded coming into the 2020 season. And now there's another position we need to fill, and that's the right tackle position. We cannot have Rick Wagner as a starting right tackle. I don't think he's a starting caliber player anymore. I just don't think so. We already have somewhat of a liability with Billy Turner, and if you put Rick Wagner out there right next to him, then man, that's just going to be even worse. That's going to be a liability on that right side with Billy Turner at right guard and Rick Wagner at right tackle. This is not a good signing if you plan on having Rick Wagner as your starting right tackle. Now, if he's there for depth purposes, then I'm fine with it. But that just adds another position that we have to get better at in the draft. And I just don't like that because we only had about 4 that I thought needed to be upgraded. But if we're going to use Rick Wagner for depth purposes, I really don't mind the signing. I just don't want him to be a starter for the Green Bay Packers. Now, moving on to the Green Bay Packers' next signing, and I like this signing a lot. The Green Bay Packers signed linebacker Christian Kirksey for 2 years, $16 million. And he's an upgrade over Blake Martinez, especially if he can stay healthy. Now, the problem is he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's only played in 9 games combined over the last 2 seasons. And that's why the Packers were able to sign him for 2 years, $16 million. If he would have stayed healthy, he would not be available for the Packers at that price, and he probably wouldn't be on the team right now. But this guy's very good in the run game. He's an upgrade over Blake Martinez when it comes to the run game. He's got good speed. He's very instinctive. He's very physical, and he takes very good angles in the run game. He looks for contact. He loves contact, man. This guy is really good in the run game. And when it comes to the passing game, he's a little bit better than Blake Martinez in coverage, just a little bit. He's not great in coverage. So I do think the Packers need to address the middle linebacker position again, maybe in the draft. Have somebody alongside him in the starting lineup, and for depth purposes as well, because Christian Kirksey has not been available in the last 2 seasons, and that's going to be the problem that we have to worry about, is his availability for the Packers in 2020. But if he can stay healthy, this is a steal in free agency for the Packers. He's a very good middle linebacker. Now, let's talk about some Green Bay Packer players who were re-signed in free agency. We have Jake Kumerow. I like this pickup. I didn't mind the Packers signing Jake Kumerow. I actually liked what he brought to the table last year. He's not very good, but he's going to play hard, and he's going to make some big plays here and there. And I like him as a depth guy. Hopefully the Packers address the wide receiver position some more in free agency and in the draft, so we won't have to rely on Jake Kumerow. But I did like what he brought to the table last season. Another guy that the Packers re-signed, wide receiver Allen Lazard. I really liked what he did in 2019. He really made some big plays for the Packers, and he really stepped up as wide receiver number 2 for the Packers last year. Now, he's not a wide receiver number 2, and like I said, the Packers need to address the wide receiver position in free agency and in the draft, and Allen Lazard will be a very good depth guy. Hopefully he can be our wide receiver number 4, and at worst wide receiver number 3, but hopefully he can fall to wide receiver number 4. I think he'll be very productive at that spot. And then the Packers also re-signed Marcedes Lewis. I wasn't sure if he was going to come back or not, but I'm glad they re-signed him. I really like Marcedes Lewis. He's very good in the run game when it comes to blocking. He's good at pass protection when it comes to blocking in the passing game. And he made a few big catches for the Packers in 2019. I really like what he brings to the table. He's getting up there in age, but he's still productive for the Packers, and I like that signing. The Packers also re-signed safety Will Redmond. I liked what he brought to the table last season. He finished 3rd on the team amongst defensive backs for the Green Bay Packers when it came to run stopping. He did a good job in the run game, and he was pretty decent in coverage as well. He made some good plays for the Packers in 2019, and he's a good depth guy. So I like the re-signing of Will Redmond. They also re-signed tight end Robert Tonyan. Now, I wasn't sure if the Packers were going to bring him back either, but I do like Robert Tonyan. I like what he brings to the table. He comes up with some big catches here and there, but I like him as a depth guy. Hopefully he can be tight end number 3. Hopefully the Packers address the tight end position in free agency and in the draft, either or. And hopefully Jay Sternberger can be tight end number 1 or tight end number 2. Hopefully we can see a lot more Jay Sternberger this season. And just have Robert Tonyan on the team for depth purposes. And then they also re-signed defensive lineman Tyler Lancaster. I like Tyler Lancaster as a depth guy as well. He made some big plays for the Packers in 2019. So I like the moves that they made. I like how they brought back some of the guys from the 2019 team. I really wanted a lot of these guys back. Now, some guys that I did not want to return from the 2019 team were Geronimo Allison, Jimmy Graham, Jason Spriggs, and Lane Taylor. And Lane Taylor still remains on the Packers roster. I don't know why. If we cut him, we could save a lot more cap space and possibly go get some more guys in free agency. But that's another story for another day. And let's move on to some Packer players who were lost in free agency. And starting with the number 1 guy, we have Blake Martinez. We all knew that Blake Martinez was not going to stay with the Green Bay Packers for the 2020 season. We knew we were going to lose him to free agency because of the price he was going to command. And I'm not upset about it. I actually love Blake Martinez on and off the field. He wasn't really a good football player, but I love the energy that he brought to the team. I love the confidence that he played with, and I just loved his energy and his hustle. He really went out there and he played hard. Now, he was a liability in the run game, and he was a liability in coverage. He couldn't cover anybody to save his life, But like I said, I just love Blake Martinez as a person. He's just a great guy. And he moved on and he signed with the New York Giants. And he got paid, I believe, $12 million a year. And the Packers weren't going to re-sign him for that much. So we all saw it coming. And I'm happy for him. I'm glad he got his money. And like I said, I love Blake Martinez. So I'm happy for him. And another guy the Packers lost in free agency was right tackle Brian Bulaga. He's been with the Packers since 2010, and he's the youngest player to start in a Super Bowl game. And I love what he did for the Packers. Man, he was one of the best right tackles in football for a few seasons. And last season, he was one of the best right tackles. Now, he's battled injuries over his career, like I mentioned earlier in the video. But man, I'm really gonna miss Brian Bulaga because he was a great football player. He was an elite right tackle, and he's gonna be a big loss for the Green Bay Packers. He signed with the Los Angeles Chargers for 3 years, $30 million. And I really wish the Packers would have brought him back. I believe that we could have signed him for that price, and I think he even would have took a hometown discount. I don't even think he would have been $10 million a year for the Packers. I think we could have got him for $8 million a year. And that's just, $3 million more than what Rick Wagner was. And he's a way better football player than Rick Wagner. And I think this move is going to hurt the Green Bay Packers if they don't address that right tackle position. But we're going to miss Brian Bulaga, and we're going to miss everything he did for us. Also, another guy that the Green Bay Packers lost in free agency, tight end Jimmy Graham. Now, we all saw this coming. Everybody knew that the Green Bay Packers were not going to bring Jimmy Graham back for the 2020 season. And he signed with the Chicago Bears, and now he's making $9 million a year. I really can't believe that the Chicago Bears paid this guy $9 million a year. Like, you have to watch the film and see Jimmy Graham is no longer good anymore. He's washed up. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. I'm going to keep it real in 2020. Jimmy Graham is washed up. He is not the same tight end that we know. He's not that same jump ball tight end that we know, the fast tight end that we knew and that we loved. And his tenure with the Green Bay Packers was terrible. I mean, he had so many drops. He was so slow. He couldn't get open. He couldn't block for anything. He was just a liability in Green Bay. And he was taking up reps from Jay Sternberger and Robert Tonyan. And it was time to move on from him. And I'm glad that the Chicago Bears overpaid for him. And they're going to see what we saw in Green Bay. Now, another guy that we lost in free agency, Danny Vitale. I really wanted Danny Vitale to come back. And I really wish that the Packers would have used him more in 2019 in the passing game, because Danny Vitale can really catch that ball. And I wish they would have handed the ball off to him more in 2019. He moved on and he signed with the New England Patriots. And I think that's a huge pickup for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. I think Bill Belichick is going to know how to use Danny Vitale, and he's going to use him to the fullest. And Danny Vitale is going to be a big pickup for the New England Patriots. Now, let's look at some Packer free agents that I would love to re-sign that are still available. Cornerback Tramon Williams. I talked a lot of trash about Tramon Williams before the 2019 season. I talked about how he was old and how we should have released him. And in 2019, Tramon Williams really proved me wrong. He really proved me wrong. Tramon Williams was excellent for the Green Bay Packers as a slot corner. And even though he's up there in age, man, he really performed. And part of that reason is because Kevin King stayed healthy all of 2019, and Jair Alexander stayed healthy in 2019. So we didn't have to rely on Tramon Williams to play on the outside for the majority of the season. He got to play in the slot, and he did a very good job in pass coverage. I believe he was amongst the top defensive backs when it came to pass coverage. I have to look that stat up. But I do remember he was up there at the top when it came to the slot corners and completion percentage against him. He was excellent for the Packers in 2019, and I think the Packers need to bring him back. I know he'll be cheap, so I hope he can return to Green Bay again. And another guy from the Packers that's still available that I want them to re-sign is Tyler Ervin. Tyler Ervin was signed by the Green Bay Packers late in the 2019 season. Our special teams was terrible. We had no type of return game. Before he got to Green Bay, we had negative return yards. And he completely came to Green Bay and he just turned his special teams around. He had some big returns. He also caught a few passes as a wide receiver, and he also got some snaps at the running back position, some end-around plays, some screen passes. Tyler Ervin was a very versatile player for the Green Bay Packers, and I would love to have him back. I think we need to have him back because we have nobody in the return game right now. And I really don't want to rely on a rookie that we draft. I want to bring Tyler Ervin back. I think that's a need for the Packers. Also, another guy that I would love to have re-signed, that is a former Green Bay Packer, Ibrahim Campbell. I talked a lot of trash about him coming into the 2019 season. I just said that he was a guy that the Packers signed off the street, and I was wrong. Ibrahim Campbell was pretty good for the Green Bay Packers. He proved that he can come in, he can play the safety position, that hybrid safety position. He's good in the run game. He's decent in pass coverage, and he came in and he made a couple of plays for the Green Bay Packers. Ibrahim Campbell is a very good depth guy for the Green Bay Packers, and he's reliable. So I would love for the Green Bay Packers to re-sign him. And then the last guy that is a former Green Bay Packer that is still available, Jared Veldheer. Like I mentioned, I'm not comfortable with the Rick Wagner signing. I think we need to address that right tackle position, Jared Veldheer. When Brian Bulaga went down in that Detroit Lions game, man, Jared Veldheer was very excellent for the Packers in that game. And he's a very good offensive lineman. He's a great right tackle. And if we could re-sign him, I would love that. I don't mind him starting for the Green Bay Packers because last season he proved that he could come in and he could play at a high level. So I would love for the Packers to re-sign Jared Veldheer if possible. Now let's move on to the NFL free agents that I would love to sign. Number 1, Taylor Gabriel, a.k.a. Turbo. Man, this guy is super fast. We've seen it in Atlanta when he played for the Falcons. We saw it when he was in Chicago. He really turned that offense around 2 seasons ago when they went 12-4 and won the division. He was a part of that. And now he's a free agency. He's a guy who could come in. He could be a wide receiver number 2 at worst. And if the Packers draft another receiver in the draft, he could be wide receiver number 3. And if he's your wide receiver number 3, your offense is going to be very good. He's a deep threat. He's very fast, like I mentioned. He's got that 4.3 speed. You can give him the ball in the screen game. He could take it to the house. He can run a streak route, take it to the house. I mean, this guy is very, very good. And I think the Packers need some speed. I don't think Marquez Valdez-Scantling is that guy. I think we need some veteran presence right now. We're in win mode right now, because Aaron Rodgers is getting up there in age. So I would love for the Green Bay Packers to sign Mr. Turbo, Taylor Gabriel. And the last guy that I would really, really love, that's a free agent in the NFL right now, Snacks Harrison. I mentioned earlier in the video, the Packers need to address that interior defensive lineman position. Next to Kenny Clark, we need another guy who's a starting caliber guy who could play at a high level, and Snacks Harrison is that guy. Now, he didn't have a good 2019 season, but he was on a bad defense last year. They had no type of pass rush. They couldn't stop the run in Detroit, and they were a losing organization, and Snacks didn't want to be there. He even came out and said it after the season. And I think Snacks can still play at a high level. He's a great run stopper. You put him next to Kenny Clark, man, that just fills in the need at the interior defensive lineman position. So those are 2 guys that are remaining free agents in the NFL that I would just love for the Packers to sign. Now, there are plenty other guys that I would like the Packers to sign that are free agents, but those 2 guys are the ones that I would love if the Packers re-sign. Now, my free agency grade for week 1 for the Green Bay Packers, I give it a C. I really don't like that Rick Wagner signing because I think they're going to plug him in and replace him with Brian Bulaga and have him as a starter. If that's the case, I can't deal with it. I don't like it. And then the Christian Kirksey signing, I liked it. I like it a lot. but he hasn't been available, and I'm worried about that. He's only played in 9 games in the last 2 seasons, and that worries me. So if he goes down, we're back to the 2019 Green Bay Packers all over again at that middle linebacker position. We have Oren Burks, Ty Summers, and Curtis Bolton that are left at that middle linebacker position on the depth chart. And I really don't believe in Oren Burks. Ty Summers, he's still a work in progress, and I'm not sure what they expect from Curtis Bolton. He's coming off a torn ACL injury, so I'm not sure if he can get back to where he was in the preseason last year. My grade for the Packers free agency in week 1 is a C. That's my grade for it. And that's my recap for the Green Bay Packers week 1 of the 2020 free agency. I still think we need to address the wide receiver position in free agency, and I think we need to address the interior defensive line position in free agency and the tight end position. And I think we can get a middle linebacker somewhere in the draft. That might be our first round pick. I'm not sure yet. We still have some time, and we'll see what goes on. But I'm going to continue to post content. We're dealing with the coronavirus right now, so I don't have a job right now. I'm currently unemployed temporarily. No more internships for me anymore. Those are canceled. School is canceled. So I'm going to be at home like a lot of other guys, and I'm going to continue to post content. And I'm going to start my 2020 NFL Draft Spotlight for the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to post content of guys that I think the Packers could pick up in the first round. So I'll be posting content consistently now that I'm locked up in the house. But everybody be safe from the coronavirus. Stay in the house. Stay safe. Stay corona-free. Leave a like. Subscribe to the channel. Share the video. And also follow the social media on Twitter at Cheesehead_talk. Again, that's Cheesehead_talk. Go Pack, go.
I can't see nobody stopping us. Unstoppable, unstoppable, unstoppable. Run up that paper and get it. Whatever it take, we gon' get it. You know ain't nobody stopping us. Mafia, mafia, mafia.